I was standing in line at the grocery store, mindlessly scrolling through my phone, when the notification changed everything. It was from my bank. A charge for $347 at the Riverside Inn, a boutique hotel 20 minutes from our house. The timestamp read 2:47 p.m. Today. My wife Natalie was supposed to be at her book club. The cashier was scanning items for the woman ahead of me, the beeping rhythm suddenly too loud in my ears. I opened our shared banking app with trembling fingers, watching the charge sit there like a neon sign. The Riverside Inn. I'd driven past it 100 times. It was the kind of place with hourly rates disguised as day stays. "Sir, you're next?" I looked up. The cashier, a teenager with purple hair, was staring at me. The line behind me had grown. "Sorry." I grabbed a pack of gum from the display and paid, my autopilot taking over while my brain spiraled. There had to be an explanation. Maybe book club changed locations. Maybe one of her friends was having some kind of crisis and needed a private place to talk. Maybe. My phone buzzed again. A text from Natalie. "Book club running late. Don't wait up for dinner. Love you." The grocery bag slipped from my hand, a jar of pasta sauce shattering across the parking lot asphalt. Red splattered across my shoes like accusation. I'd been married to Natalie for 11 years. We had 2 kids, Emma, 9, and Tyler, 6. We had a mortgage, a golden retriever named Biscuit, and a minivan with cheerleading stickers on the back window. We had date nights every other Friday. We had inside jokes and shared passwords and a life. Or I thought we did. I got in my car, leaving the broken jar where it fell. My hands gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles went white. The Riverside Inn was 17 minutes away according to my GPS. I could be there in 15. What was I going to do? Burst into the lobby? Demand to know if my wife was there? Confront her in front of whoever she was with? I sat in the parking lot for 10 minutes, watching families load groceries into their trunks, living their normal Wednesday afternoons. Then I drove home instead. Our house looked exactly as it had when I'd left for the store 30 minutes ago. Red brick colonial, black shutters, Emma's bike abandoned on the front lawn. The normalcy of it made my stomach turn. Inside, I found my laptop and pulled up our bank account on the big screen. The charge was still there. I clicked through to previous statements, searching for a pattern I'd somehow missed. There. 3 weeks ago. The Riverside Inn. 347. 5 weeks before that. Same place. Same amount. I went back further. February. January. December. Every few weeks for the past 7 months. The same charge. Always on a Wednesday afternoon. Always when she claimed to be at book club. How had I not noticed? We shared finances. I reviewed our statements. But I'd been looking for the big things. Fraudulent charges, billing errors. Not my wife's affair itemized in 3-digit increments. I heard the garage door open. Natalie was home. My first instinct was to close the laptop, to pretend I didn't know, to buy myself time to think. But my hands wouldn't move. I sat there at the kitchen table, the bank statement glowing on the screen, as she walked in. "Hey, babe!" Her voice was bright, cheerful. She looked beautiful, her dark hair freshly styled, makeup perfect, wearing the blue dress I'd complimented last week. "How was your day?" I turned the laptop toward her. "How was book club?" She glanced at the screen, and I watched her face transform. The smile froze, then cracked, then shattered. Her purse slipped from her shoulder to the floor. "Ryan, The Riverside Inn charges $347 for their executive day suite." My voice sounded calm, detached, like I was reading a weather report. "I looked it up. 4 hours, Champagne included. Seems like a weird place for book club. It's not what you think. I laughed. Actually laughed. That's what you're going with? Please, just let me explain. 7 months, Natalie. I found charges going back 7 months. Every few weeks. Always Wednesdays. I stood up, needing to move, needing to do something with the energy coursing through me. So explain. I'm listening. She was crying now, mascara tracking down her cheeks. I never meant for it to happen. There it was. Confirmation. Some part of me had still been hoping for a miracle explanation, some impossible innocent reason. That hope died. Who is he? She shook her head, backing toward the door. Who is he? It doesn't matter. It matters to me. My voice cracked, the calm facade breaking. You've been sleeping with someone for 7 months. You've been lying to me, to our kids, every single week. So you're going to tell me who he is, or I'm going to start calling every single person in your phone until I find out. Bryce, she whispered. Bryce Patterson. The name hit me like a physical blow. Bryce Patterson, her boss, the regional manager she'd been working under, poor choice of words, for the past year. The guy who'd given her the promotion, who she'd mentioned casually at dinner, whose texts I'd seen pop up on her phone about quarterly reports and strategy meetings. Your boss. I sat back down, legs suddenly unsteady. You're sleeping with your married boss. She wiped her eyes, smearing makeup across her face. He's getting divorced. Oh, well, that makes it fine then. Ryan, please. Where are the kids? The question seemed to confuse her. What? Emma and Tyler, our children, where are they? At your mom's. She's watching them until 6. I was going to pick them up. No, I stood again. I'll get them. You need to leave. This is my house too. Then go upstairs. Go anywhere. I don't care. Just get out of my sight before I say something I can't take back. She fled. I heard her footsteps on the stairs, then the bedroom door slam. I grabbed my keys and walked out to my car, my whole body shaking now that I was alone. In the driveway, I finally let myself feel it. The rage, the betrayal, the humiliation. Then I pulled out my phone and started making calls. The first call I made was to my mother. Hey, honey. Her voice was warm, comfortable. Everything okay? I gripped the steering wheel tighter. Yeah, Mom. Listen, I'm running late. Can you keep the kids for another hour or so? Maybe feed them dinner? Of course. They're already begging for mac and cheese anyway. I could hear Tyler's laughter in the background. Ryan, are you sure you're all right? You sound... I'm fine. Just got held up at work. I'll explain later. I ended the call before she could press further. My mother had a sixth sense for disaster, and I needed time to think before she started asking questions I couldn't answer yet. The second call was to David Garrett. David and I had gone to college together, pledged the same fraternity, stood up at each other's weddings. He'd become an environmental attorney, the kind who sued corporations for dumping chemicals in rivers. We'd drifted apart over the years, different circles, different lives, but we still grabbed beers every few months. Ryan, what's up, man? David, I need to ask you something, hypothetically. There was a pause. Okay, hypothetically. If someone worked for the state EPA and they were, I don't know, approving permits they shouldn't be approving, how would someone find out about that? Another pause, longer this time. That's a pretty specific hypothetical. Just answer the question. I heard him shift, probably sitting up straighter. David had always been able to read between lines. Well, hypothetically, all permit approvals are public record. Environmental impact assessments, disposal authorizations, everything. It's all supposed to be available through FOIA requests, though the state agencies make you jump through hoops. Why? What if someone was falsifying reports, approving illegal dumping? Jesus, Ryan, his voice dropped. Are you talking about Natalie? My silence was answer enough. Look, if this is what I think it is, you need to be careful. Environmental crimes are federal jurisdiction if they cross state lines or involve interstate commerce. The EPA's Criminal Investigation Division doesn't mess around. But you'd need evidence. Real evidence, not just suspicions. What kind of evidence? Permits that don't match actual disposal records. Falsified environmental impact statements. Payment records showing bribes or kickbacks. Email correspondence. Anything that shows a pattern of deliberate violations. He paused. Ryan, what's going on? I'll call you back. I sat in the car for a long time after that, staring at our house. The red brick looked darker in the fading afternoon light. Natalie's car was still in the driveway. She hadn't left. My phone buzzed. A text from her. Please, can we talk? I deleted it. Another buzz. I know you're angry, but we need to figure this out for the kids. I turned the phone face down. The thing was, I'd never paid much attention to Natalie's work. She was a senior compliance officer for the state EPA, had been for 6 years. Before that, she'd worked her way up from an entry-level inspector position. She'd always been passionate about environmental protection, or so I'd thought. We'd met at a fundraiser for a watershed conservation group back when we were both 25 and idealistic. I'd been proud of her work, proud that she was making a difference. Now I was wondering what else I'd been blind to. I pulled out my laptop from my work bag in the back seat. Our home Wi-Fi reached to the driveway. I logged into Natalie's email. We'd shared passwords years ago, one of those married couple things that seemed sweet at the time. She'd never changed it. Probably should have, I thought bitterly. Her inbox loaded. I scrolled through, looking for anything from Bryce Patterson. There. Dozens of emails. Hundreds, maybe. I opened the most recent one, sent 3 days ago. Meeting confirmed for Wednesday, usual place. Brought the revised Hillcrest permits for you to review. The soil contamination levels are still flagged in the system, but I've adjusted the reporting format like we discussed. Should pass review now. Can't wait to see you. B. My stomach turned over. I scrolled back further. Found another one from 2 weeks ago. The Riverside site is getting pushback from the county health department. They're asking questions about the groundwater samples. I need you to expedite the disposal permits before they can request an independent assessment. Time sensitive. And another, from a month before that. Payment processed through the usual channels. Your account should reflect the deposit by end of week. Thanks for fast-tracking the Moore Creek permits. We're on schedule now. I sat back, feeling like I'd been punched. This wasn't just an affair. This was systematic corruption. Bryce ran a waste management company. I'd looked him up after Natalie mentioned his name. Patterson Environmental Services. They handled industrial waste disposal for manufacturing plants, chemical companies, construction sites. And Natalie was approving their permits, falsifying contamination reports, taking bribes. How many communities had they poisoned? I thought about Hillcrest. That was a neighborhood on the east side of town, mostly working-class families. There'd been news stories about kids getting sick, unusually high cancer rates. The state EPA had investigated and found nothing wrong, because Natalie had made sure they found nothing wrong. Moore Creek ran through 3 counties, fed into the municipal water supply for 2 small towns downstream. 30,000 people drank that water. My hands were shaking again. I downloaded everything. Every email between Natalie and Bryce for the past 2 years. I forwarded them to my personal email account, then downloaded the attachments, permits, reports, inspection records. There were spreadsheets labeled payment schedule and deposit tracking. Bank account numbers I didn't recognize. It took 20 minutes to copy everything. When I was done, I had a folder with over 300 files. The front door opened. Natalie stood on the porch, arms wrapped around herself. She'd changed into jeans and a sweater, washed off her makeup. She looked younger, vulnerable. She walked to the car. I didn't unlock the doors. She knocked on the window. "Ryan, please." I rolled it down an inch. "We need to talk about this," she said. Her eyes were red, puffy. "About what happens next, about the kids." "You should have thought about the kids before you started screwing your boss." She flinched. I know I messed up, but we can work through this. We can go to counseling, we can—" "How much did he pay you?" "What?" "Bryce, how much did he pay you to approve illegal waste disposal?" The color drained from her face. "I don't know what you're talking about." "I read your emails, Natalie. All of them." I held up my phone. Payment schedules, falsified contamination reports, Hillcrest, Moore Creek. How many others? She stepped back from the car. "You went through my email? That's what you're worried about right now? Privacy?" "Ryan, you don't understand. It's not what it looks like." "Then explain it to me. Explain how taking money to approve permits for toxic waste dumping isn't exactly what it looks like." She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. "The regulations are too strict. They're not based on real science, they're based on politics and fear-mongering. Bryce's company follows all the actual safety protocols. They just poison communities while you collect bribes and pretend everything's fine. It's not like that. How many kids in Hillcrest have cancer because of you?" She was crying now, but I felt nothing. No sympathy, no guilt, just cold, clear anger. "I could lose my job," she whispered. "You're going to lose a lot more than your job." I rolled up the window and started the car. She banged on the glass, shouting something I couldn't hear over the engine. I backed out of the driveway, leaving her standing there in the fading light. I drove to a coffee shop 3 miles away, ordered something I didn't drink, and sat in the corner with my laptop. I pulled up the EPA's website and found the contact information for their Criminal Investigation Division. Then I started writing an email. Detailed, methodical, with every piece of evidence attached. My phone rang. "Natalie." I declined the call. It rang again. I turned it off. By the time I finished, it was dark outside. I read through the email one more time, my finger hovering over the send button. This would destroy her. Federal charges, prison time, her career obliterated. Bryce, too. And it would expose everything: the contamination, the cover-ups, the communities that had been poisoned while officials looked the other way. I thought about Emma and Tyler, about explaining to them why Mommy was going to prison. Then I thought about the kids in Hillcrest, drinking contaminated water, playing in poisoned soil. I hit send. The federal agents showed up at our house on a Friday morning, 3 days after I'd sent the evidence package. I was making breakfast when I saw the 2 black SUVs pull into our driveway. Emma looked up from her cereal, eyes widening. "Dad, why are there government cars outside?" "Stay in the kitchen," I said, already moving toward the front door. I'd known they were coming. Special Agent Victoria Lang had called me the day before, her voice professionally neutral as she informed me that the EPA's Criminal Investigation Division would need to conduct interviews and execute search warrants. She'd thanked me for my cooperation, which felt surreal. I wasn't cooperating. I was burning down my entire life and calling it justice. Natalie appeared at the top of the stairs, still in her bathrobe. She saw the vehicles through the window and her face went white. "Ryan, what did you do?" 4 agents emerged from the SUVs, 2 men and 2 women, all wearing navy windbreakers with EPA OIG emblazoned across the back. Office of Inspector General, the serious ones. I opened the door before they could knock. "Ryan Caldwell?" The woman in front was maybe 40 with steel gray hair pulled back tight. "I'm Special Agent Lang. We spoke yesterday." "I know who you are." She held up a folded document. "We have a warrant to search the premises and seize electronic devices belonging to Natalie Caldwell. We also need to conduct formal interviews with both of you." Behind me, I heard Natalie's footsteps on the stairs. Fast, panicked. "You can't just," she started. "Ma'am, we can and we are." Lang's voice didn't change tone. "You're not under arrest at this time, but I need to advise you that you have the right to remain silent and to consult with an attorney." The other agents were already moving past us, spreading through the house with practiced efficiency. One of them, a younger guy with a buzz cut, headed straight for Natalie's home office. Emma appeared in the kitchen doorway, Tyler behind her. "Dad?" "Take your brother upstairs," I said. "Now." For once, Emma didn't argue. She grabbed Tyler's hand and pulled him toward the stairs, but not before he saw the agents rifling through our living room, photographing documents, bagging Natalie's laptop. Natalie was crying. "Ryan, please, tell them this is a mistake." I looked at her, really looked at her, and felt nothing but cold satisfaction. "It's not a mistake. You poisoned people, Natalie. You took money to let a company dump toxic waste into communities, into their water. I didn't know. You knew." Agent Lang cut her off. "Mrs. Caldwell, I strongly suggest you stop talking and contact an attorney." The search took 2 hours. They seized Natalie's laptop, her work phone, her personal phone, and 3 boxes of documents from her office. They took my laptop too, which I'd expected. I'd already backed up everything I needed. They interviewed us separately. I sat at our kitchen table with Agent Lang and her partner, a quiet man named Foster who took notes on a tablet. They asked me to walk them through everything: how I'd discovered the affair, how I'd accessed Natalie's email, what I'd found. "I know I violated her privacy," I said. "I know that might cause problems with the evidence." Lang shook her head. "You're not law enforcement. Spousal access to shared devices is a gray area, but that's not your concern. What matters is what we find in our own investigation." "The communities," I said. "Hillcrest, Moore Creek. How bad is it?" Foster looked up from his tablet. "We can't discuss ongoing investigations, but I can tell you that the EPA has been receiving complaints from Hillcrest residents for 18 months. Elevated cancer rates, respiratory issues in children, contaminated well water. Every time we requested inspection records from the state office, we were told the site was in compliance. Because Natalie falsified the reports." "That's what we're investigating," Lang said carefully. "Mr. Caldwell, I want you to understand something. If what you've shown us is accurate, this isn't just an affair or a bribery case. This is systematic environmental crime that's affected thousands of people. The legal consequences will be severe." I thought about Emma and Tyler upstairs, probably scared and confused. I thought about how their mother would likely go to prison, how their lives would be marked by this forever. Good, I said. Natalie hired a lawyer that afternoon. Some expensive guy from the city named Douglas Whitmore, who showed up in a Mercedes in a suit that probably cost more than our mortgage payment. He set up shop in our living room and spoke to Natalie in hushed tones while I kept the kids occupied upstairs. I'd told them the truth, or a version of it. That their mother had made serious mistakes at work, that the government needed to investigate, that things were going to change. Emma had cried. Tyler had asked if Mommy was going to jail. I don't know, I'd told him, because I wasn't going to lie. Around 6, Whitmore knocked on the bedroom door where I was helping Tyler with a puzzle. Mr. Caldwell, I need to speak with you. I followed him downstairs. Natalie sat on the couch, her eyes red and swollen. She wouldn't look at me. Whitmore was all business. My client is willing to offer full cooperation with federal investigators in exchange for consideration during sentencing. She's prepared to provide testimony against Bryce Patterson and any other individuals involved in the scheme. I don't care what she's prepared to do. You should care, Whitmore said sharply. Because the EPA is going to examine every aspect of this case, including how you obtain the evidence. If you accessed her work email without authorization, it was on her personal laptop, which she used on our home network, which I pay for. That's a legal argument we can make, but it's not guaranteed to hold. What is guaranteed is that if Natalie cooperates, she might avoid the maximum sentence, which would be better for your children. I laughed. Actually laughed. Don't you dare use my kids as leverage. She should have thought about them before she helped poison an entire community for money. Natalie finally looked up. I didn't know how bad it was. Bryce said the contamination levels were within acceptable margins, that we were just cutting through red tape. Stop! I held up my hand. I read the emails, Natalie. I saw the reports you buried, the ones that showed benzene levels 50 times the safe limit, the ones documenting heavy metals in the groundwater near the elementary school. You knew exactly what you were doing. Whitmore stepped between us. This conversation is over. Mr. Caldwell, I assume you'll be filing for divorce? Already have an attorney. Then all future communication should go through legal counsel. He gathered his briefcase. Natalie, don't speak to anyone about this case without me present. That includes your husband. After they left, Whitmore drove her to a hotel, said it would be better if she wasn't in the house. I sat in the dark living room and let myself feel it. All of it. The rage, the betrayal, the sick satisfaction of watching her world collapse. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. You're going to regret this, both of you. I stared at it for a long moment, then forwarded it to Agent Lang. Bryce Patterson, probably, or one of his people. Didn't matter. They were all going down. Upstairs, I heard Emma crying softly in her room. I should go to her, I knew. Should comfort her, explain things better, be the parent who was still standing. But I sat there in the dark for another minute, looking at our family photos on the wall. Our wedding picture. The kids as babies. Last summer's vacation to the beach. All of it contaminated now. Just like Moore Creek, just like Hillcrest, just like everything Natalie had touched. The threatening text had come from a burner number. Agent Lang traced it to a prepaid phone purchased with cash at a convenience store in Glendale, 40 minutes from our house. No surveillance footage that helped. Dead end. Could be Patterson, she'd said during our follow-up meeting at the federal building. Could be someone else in the network. We're still mapping all the players. That was 4 days ago. Since then, nothing. No more threats. No mysterious cars on our street. Just the suffocating weight of waiting while federal investigators built their case, and my wife sat in our guest room with an ankle monitor, released on $250,000 bond that her parents had somehow scraped together. I'd moved her things out of our bedroom the day after her arraignment. She didn't protest. We existed in the same house like ghosts, haunting different rooms, our only interactions brief and cold when the kids were around. Emma had asked twice why Mommy was sleeping in the guest room. I'd said we were having grown-up problems and left it at that. Tyler was too young to notice much beyond the fact that Mommy was home more than usual, which he seemed to like. I was in the kitchen making lunch when my phone rang. Unknown number but local area code. I'd started answering everything since the investigation began. Ryan Caldwell? Speaking. This is Joanne Whitfield from the Hillcrest Community Health Alliance. A woman's voice, tired but determined. Agent Lang gave me your number. Said you were the one who reported the contamination. I set down the knife I'd been using to cut sandwiches. That's right. I wanted to thank you. She paused, and I heard her take a shaky breath. My daughter Kayla was diagnosed with leukemia 2 years ago. She's 8. We've lived in Hillcrest her whole life, and I kept asking why so many kids on our street were getting sick. The state kept telling us the water was fine. My chest tightened. I'm sorry about your daughter. The EPA came through last week, did full testing. They found trichloroethylene levels 40 times above safe limits in our groundwater. Benzene, heavy metals, everything Patterson's company was supposed to be disposing of properly, they were just dumping in unlined pits 2 miles from our neighborhood. I'd read the preliminary reports Agent Lang had shared. The contamination was worse than anyone had initially thought. 3 separate communities affected. Estimated cleanup costs in the hundreds of millions. And that didn't account for the medical costs, the lives already damaged. There are 17 families just on my street, Joanne continued. Cancer, birth defects, neurological problems. We're organizing, getting lawyers involved. But I wanted you to know what you did mattered. You saved lives by coming forward. After we hung up, I stood at the kitchen counter for a long time, staring at nothing. The sandwich bread had started to curl at the edges. Who was that? I turned. Natalie stood in the doorway, wearing sweatpants and one of my old college shirts. She looked smaller than I remembered, like the weight of everything was physically compressing her. The ankle monitor was visible above her sock. Someone from Hillcrest, I said. Her daughter has leukemia, from the water your boyfriend poisoned. Natalie flinched. He's not my boyfriend. Right. He's your co-conspirator. Poor choice of words. She moved further into the kitchen, keeping distance between us. I know you don't believe me, but I didn't know how bad it was. Bryce said the contamination levels were negligible, that the reports were being overly cautious. Stop! I held up a hand. I've read your emails, Natalie. You knew exactly what you were approving. You falsified test results. You buried complaints. You took money to look the other way while people got sick. I made a mistake. You made hundreds of mistakes over 3 years. Agent Lang had traced the corruption back further than the affair. Natalie had been on Patterson's payroll long before she'd been in his bed. And the only reason you're sorry is because you got caught. She wrapped her arms around herself. What do you want me to say? Nothing. I don't want you to say anything. I went back to making sandwiches. Your lawyer's coming at 2, right? You should probably get ready. Ryan, Emma and Tyler will be home from my mom's at 4. I told them you had to work from home for a while because of a special project. They don't need to know the truth yet. They're going to find out eventually. Yes, and when they do, I'll be the one helping them understand why their mother chose money over people's lives. But not today. She left without another word. I heard her footsteps on the stairs, the guest room door closing. The doorbell rang at 1:30. I wasn't expecting anyone, and Natalie's lawyer wasn't due for another half hour. Through the window, I saw a man in a dark suit standing on our porch. Not federal. They dress differently. This guy looked expensive. I opened the door but didn't unlock the screen. Can I help you? Mr. Caldwell? My name is Kenneth Vance. I represent Patterson Environmental Services. He held up a business card against the screen. I was hoping we could have a brief conversation. I have nothing to say to you or your client. I understand you're upset, but there may be aspects of this situation you're not fully aware of. His smile was practiced, professional. May I come in? Just 5 minutes. No. Mr. Caldwell, my client is prepared to make certain accommodations to help with your family's transition during this difficult time. I stared at him. Are you seriously trying to bribe me right now? On my front porch? Not a bribe. A gesture of goodwill. Patterson Environmental Services recognizes that you and your children are innocent parties in this matter. We'd like to establish a trust fund for Emma and Tyler's education. $200,000 each, no strings attached. Except the string where I keep my mouth shut about your client poisoning communities for profit. Vance's smile didn't waver. My client maintains his innocence, but regardless of the legal outcome, your children's future shouldn't suffer. This is simply an attempt to do the right thing. The right thing. I laughed, sharp and bitter. Your client has been doing the right thing straight into people's graves, and now you want to throw money at me to make it go away. The offer is genuine, Mr. Caldwell. Think about Emma and Tyler. College tuition, medical expenses if needed, a secure future. Get off my property. Mr. Caldwell, I said get off my property before I call the federal agents who are building a criminal case against your client and tell them his lawyer just attempted to tamper with a witness. Vance's expression finally shifted, the professional mask slipping to show something colder underneath. You're making this harder than it needs to be. Am I? Because from where I'm standing, I'm making it exactly as hard as it should be. I pulled out my phone. You've got 10 seconds before I dial. He left. I watched him get into a black Mercedes and drive away, then immediately called Agent Lang. They just tried to buy me off, I said when she answered. Patterson's lawyer showed up at my house with an offer to set up trust funds for my kids. Did you record the conversation? No, should I have? Would have been helpful, but don't worry about it. Write down everything he said, exact words if you can remember them. Email it to me within the hour. She paused. This is actually good news. How is that good news? Because it means Patterson's scared. He wouldn't be making moves like this if he thought he had a solid defense. He's trying to eliminate variables, and you're a variable. I heard papers rustling on her end. I'm going to have a patrol car swing by your house a few times today, just as a precaution. And Ryan, don't answer the door for anyone you don't know. After I hung up, I stood in the living room and looked at our family photos on the mantle. Emma's gap-toothed kindergarten picture. Tyler's soccer team photo from last fall. Our vacation to the beach 3 summers ago, all 4 of us sunburned and happy. I'd thought the worst part was over. The discovery, the confrontation, the federal investigation. But I was starting to realize we were just at the beginning. The real nightmare was still unfolding, and my kids were going to be caught in the middle of it. Upstairs, I heard Natalie moving around in the guest room, getting ready for her lawyer. Outside, a black sedan drove slowly past our house. The black sedan didn't return that night. I sat in the darkened living room until 3 in the morning, watching the street through a gap in the curtains. Emma's softball bat across my lap like some suburban vigilante. The absurdity wasn't lost on me. What was I going to do? Challenge armed criminals to a batting cage duel? But nobody came. Thursday morning arrived with painful normalcy. I made pancakes for Emma and Tyler, checked their backpacks, and drove them to school like I hadn't spent half the night preparing for a home invasion. Emma asked why I looked tired. I blamed work stress. The lies were getting easier, which probably should have worried me more than it did. Special Agent Lang called at 9:47 a.m. Mr. Caldwell, we need to talk about something that came up during document analysis. I pulled into a coffee shop parking lot. What is it? The falsified reports your wife approved. They weren't just for Patterson's company. We've identified at least 4 other waste management contractors who received similar treatment. The contamination is more widespread than we initially thought. My stomach dropped. How much more? We're still mapping it, but preliminary analysis suggests at least 11 communities across 3 counties. Hillcrest was just the most obvious because the dumping there started earliest. She paused. Mr. Caldwell, the health department is going to have to issue public warnings. This is going to become very visible, very quickly. Good. People deserve to know. I'm calling because you should prepare for media attention. Your name will likely come out as the whistleblower. We'll do what we can to protect your privacy, but in cases this large, it's difficult to maintain anonymity. I thought about Emma and Tyler, about reporters camping outside their school. What about my kids? We can arrange for local police to increase patrols near your home and their school. It's precautionary, but given last night's incident and the attempted bribe, we're taking threats seriously. The attempted bribe. I'd almost forgotten about Kenneth Vance and his briefcase full of trust funds. There's something else, Lang continued. Patterson's attorney contacted the U.S. Attorney's Office this morning. Patterson wants to cooperate. I gripped the steering wheel. Cooperate how? He's claiming your wife was the primary architect of the scheme. Says she approached him about the arrangement, set the prices for approvals, and managed the falsified documentation. He's positioning himself as a businessman who made poor choices under pressure from a corrupt official. The coffee in my cup holder suddenly looked nauseating. That's garbage. He owns the company. He's the one who profited. We know. His story has significant holes, and we have evidence contradicting several of his claims. But it means this is going to get uglier. If Patterson's trying to flip everything onto your wife, his legal team will come after her credibility hard, and that might include coming after yours. How? They'll argue you have motivation to fabricate evidence because of the affair. They'll suggest you doctored the emails or that you're exaggerating the contamination data to punish your wife. Her voice softened slightly. I'm telling you this because you need to be prepared. The forensic analysis will prove the documents are authentic, but the process isn't pleasant. After we hung up, I sat in the parking lot for 20 minutes, watching people come and go with their lattes and their normal problems. A woman argued with someone on her phone about a missed dentist appointment. 2 construction workers laughed about something one of them had seen on TV. Regular life, happening all around me while mine continued its spectacular disintegration. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. You should have taken the money. I stared at the screen, then immediately called Lang back. I'm getting another threatening text. Forward it to me immediately. Don't respond. Don't delete it. I heard her typing. We're going to set up a trace on your phone. Can you come to the federal building this afternoon? Yeah, yes. 2 o'clock. Bring your phone and any other devices your wife had access to. Laptop, tablet, anything she might have used for the emails. I drove home in a fog, trying to figure out who'd sent the text. Patterson's people seemed obvious, but would they really be that stupid after already attempting witness tampering? Or was it someone else entirely? One of the other contractors Lang had mentioned. Someone with even more to lose? The house felt different when I walked in. Violated somehow, even though nothing had been physically disturbed. Natalie's ankle monitor had been beeping upstairs earlier. She was required to stay within the house except for attorney meetings and court appearances. I hadn't spoken to her since the arrest, hadn't wanted to. I found her in the kitchen, staring at her laptop screen. She looked up when I entered, her face pale and drawn. They're saying I orchestrated everything. I know. Ryan, you have to tell them that's not true. Patterson approached me. He said it was just cutting through red tape, that the disposal methods were safe, that… Stop. I held up my hand. Just stop. I made mistakes, I know that, but I'm not some criminal mastermind. Patterson knew exactly what he was doing. He showed me how to falsify the reports. He set up the payment structure. You still did it, Natalie. You still took the money. You still signed off on permits that poisoned people. She flinched. Douglas says if I cooperate, if I testify against Patterson, they might reduce the charges. Your attorney's name is Douglas? Douglas Whitmore. He specializes in federal cases. She closed the laptop. He says the affair complicates things, that Patterson's team will use it to discredit me, make me look like I was obsessed or unstable. The irony was almost beautiful. The affair that had led me to discover the corruption was now being weaponized against her. That's not my problem anymore. Ryan, please. I need you to tell the investigators that I'm not lying about Patterson's involvement. They'll believe you. You found the evidence. I laughed, a harsh sound that surprised us both. You want me to help you? I want you to tell the truth, that's all I'm asking. The truth is that you endangered thousands of people for money and to keep sleeping with your boss. The truth is that kids in Hillcrest are getting sick because you approved dumping permits you knew were based on falsified data. The truth is that I don't know who you are anymore, and I'm not sure I ever did. She started crying, but I felt nothing. The tears that had affected me during our first confrontation now seemed like just another manipulation. I have to go, I said. I have a meeting at the federal building. What kind of meeting? The kind where I help them build a case against everyone involved in poisoning communities for profit, including you. I left her there and went upstairs to gather Natalie's laptop and tablet from our bedroom. The room still smelled like her perfume. I'd need to move out soon, find an apartment where Emma and Tyler could stay with me. The house would probably have to be sold anyway. Legal fees would consume everything. My phone buzzed again. Lang, this time. Change of plans. Can you come now? We have a development. I texted back that I was on my way, grabbed the devices and headed for the door. Natalie appeared at the top of the stairs. What did they find? I don't know yet. Ryan. Her voice cracked. I'm sorry for all of it. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I need you to know I'm sorry. I looked up at her. This woman I'd built a life with, who'd destroyed that life with choices I still couldn't fully comprehend. So am I said, and meant it. The federal building downtown was a concrete fortress that looked exactly like what it was, a place where serious things happened to people who'd made serious mistakes. I went through security, surrendered my phone for the trace setup, and was escorted to a conference room where Lang waited with two other agents I hadn't met before. "Mr. Caldwell, thank you for coming quickly," she gestured to the others. "This is Agent DeMarco and Agent Stein. They've been analyzing the financial records." Agent DeMarco, a compact woman with sharp eyes, slid a folder across the table to me. "We found something interesting in Patterson's company accounts. Payments to an offshore consulting firm called Apex Environmental Solutions. Significant payments. We're talking millions over the past 3 years." "Okay." "Apex doesn't exist. It's a shell company. The money was being funneled to a different account and from there, distributed to multiple recipients." She opened the folder, showing me a spreadsheet with highlighted entries. "One of those recipients was your wife, but there were others. 5 other EPA officials across 3 states." The room tilted slightly. 5 others? "This wasn't just about one corrupt inspector and her lover," Lang said quietly. "This was a network." The press conference was scheduled for 2 o'clock on a Thursday afternoon. I sat in my car outside the federal building, watching news vans multiply like bacteria in a petri dish. Channel 7, Channel 4, CNN. Even a crew from some national investigative journalism podcast I'd never heard of. Agent Lang had called me 3 days ago. "We're going public," she'd said. "Multi-state environmental crimes, systematic corruption, communities poisoned for profit. The story's too big to contain, and frankly, we need the pressure. Some of these officials still have friends in high places." "Do I need to be there?" "No, but the families from Hillcrest will be. Moore Creek residents. People whose kids are sick, whose water's been poisoned. They deserve to see this." So here I was, 20 minutes early, watching satellite dishes extend toward the sky like metal flowers seeking sun. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. The threatening texts had stopped after Patterson's arrest, but my finger still hesitated over the screen. "Hello? Mr. Caldwell? This is Diane Foster. I'm with the Hillcrest Community Action Group." I didn't recognize the name. "Yes? I wanted to thank you." Her voice cracked slightly. "Before this goes public and you get swallowed by media circus. My daughter Emily, she's 8. Leukemia. We've been fighting it for 2 years and we couldn't understand why so many kids in our neighborhood were getting sick." I closed my eyes. "I'm sorry." "Don't be sorry. You gave us answers. You gave us someone to hold accountable." She paused. "The EPA, the state. They all told us our water was fine, safe. We trusted them." The word hung between us like an accusation. "I just wanted you to know," she continued, "that what you did, turning in your own wife, that took courage. A lot of people wouldn't have." After we hung up, I sat there watching the news crews set up their equipment. A woman in a red blazer practiced her stand-up, gesturing at the federal building behind her. A cameraman adjusted his lens. Normal people doing normal jobs, about to broadcast the implosion of public trust in institutions designed to protect them. My phone buzzed again. This time a text from my lawyer, Jeffrey Brennan. "Divorce papers filed this morning. Natalie's attorney already requesting delay due to criminal proceedings. Typical stall tactic." I typed back, "How long?" "Could be months. Years if she drags it out. Her legal strategy will be tied to criminal case." "Great." legally bound as someone facing federal environmental crimes charges. I wondered if that would make an interesting footnote in the eventual textbooks about this case. Another text, this one from my mom. Kids are good. Tyler built a fort. Emma's reading. Don't watch the news if you don't have to. I'd moved Emma and Tyler to my parents' house in Ohio 2 weeks ago. Temporary, I'd told them. Just until things settled down. Emma had looked at me with eyes too old for 9 and asked, "Is Mom going to jail?" I'd wanted to lie, to protect her. But she'd already heard enough whispered phone calls, seen enough serious-faced agents at our door. Maybe, I'd said, she did some things that hurt people, bad things. On purpose? That was the question, wasn't it? I'd read Natalie's emails dozens of times, looking for evidence of coercion, of Patterson manipulating her. But the messages were clear. Clinical. Approve the Moore Creek permits. I'll handle the contamination reports. Payment will process Friday. Yeah, I told Emma, on purpose. At 1:55, I got out of my car and joined the crowd gathering on the federal building steps. I stayed toward the back, behind reporters and cameras, next to a cluster of people holding signs. Our water, our health, justice for Hillcrest. EPA, Environmental Poisoning Agency. A woman next to me held a framed photograph of a little boy, maybe 5 years old, with a bright smile and a baseball cap. "Is that your son?" I asked quietly. She nodded. "Jeremy. He died last year. Brain tumor." She touched the glass gently. "They told us it was just bad luck. Rare cancer, nothing environmental. But 6 kids on our street have had cancer in the past 5 years. 6. I didn't know what to say. Sorry felt inadequate. Criminal charges felt inadequate. Nothing would bring Jeremy back. At exactly 2 o'clock, the doors opened and Agent Lang emerged, flanked by other federal officials. A U.S. attorney I recognized from news coverage. The EPA's Assistant Administrator for Enforcement. Serious faces, dark suits, the visual language of justice being served. Lang stepped to the microphone cluster. "Good afternoon. Today, the Environmental Protection Agency's Criminal Investigation Division, in coordination with the U.S. Attorney's Office, is announcing charges against 8 individuals in connection with a multi-state conspiracy to falsify environmental reports and illegally dispose of toxic waste." The crowd pressed forward. Cameras clicked like insects. The investigation began 6 weeks ago when we received evidence of systematic corruption within state EPA offices in Pennsylvania, Ohio, and West Virginia. What we discovered was a criminal network that accepted millions of dollars in bribes to approve illegal waste disposal, falsify contamination reports, and actively conceal evidence of environmental damage affecting more than 60,000 residents across multiple communities. 60,000! The number hit me like a physical blow. I'd known it was bad, but seeing it quantified, hearing it spoken aloud by a federal agent. The defendants include 5 state EPA compliance officers, 2 waste management company executives, and 1 environmental consulting firm owner. All face charges including conspiracy, wire fraud, Clean Water Act violations, and falsification of federal documents. Maximum combined sentences exceed 100 years. A reporter shouted a question. "Can you name the defendants?" Lang nodded to the U.S. attorney, who stepped forward with a prepared statement. He began reading names. Natalie's came third. Natalie Caldwell, Senior Compliance Officer, Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection, charged with conspiracy to defraud the United States, wire fraud, Clean Water Act violations, and falsification of environmental reports. Hearing her name in that context, officially, publicly, irrevocably, made it real in a way the arrest hadn't. Bryce Patterson, owner and CEO of Patterson Environmental Services. The list continued. Names I didn't recognize from Ohio and West Virginia. A woman named Julie Brennan from a consulting firm in Pittsburgh. Each name another person who'd chosen profit over public health. The contamination has resulted in documented health impacts, including elevated cancer rates, particularly childhood leukemia and brain tumors, respiratory illnesses, and developmental disorders in affected communities. Cleanup costs are estimated to exceed $400 million. $400 million. And that was just cleanup, not medical costs, not wrongful death settlements, not the incalculable cost of destroyed trust. We want to be clear, Lang continued, that this investigation is ongoing. We believe additional individuals may be involved, and we're examining environmental permits issued across all 3 states over the past decade. We encourage anyone with information about potentially falsified environmental reports to contact our tip line. The questions came rapid fire then. How long had this been happening? Were there other states involved? What about criminal charges for the companies that hired Patterson Services? Did they know the disposal was illegal? I stopped listening. My attention had caught on a man standing at the edge of the press area, not holding a camera or notepad. Just watching. Mid-50s, expensive suit, the kind of careful neutrality that screamed lawyer. He was looking directly at me. Our eyes met for maybe 3 seconds before he turned and walked away, disappearing into the crowd. But something about his expression, not threatening exactly, but evaluating, made my skin prickle. I pulled out my phone and texted Agent Lang. Man in gray suit, northwest corner of crowd, just left, watching me specifically. Her response came 2 minutes later. Description? I typed out what I remembered. White, 50s, gray suit, black tie, thin build, graying hair. We'll review security footage. Stay alert. The press conference wrapped up around 2:30. Lang and the other officials fielded questions for another 20 minutes before retreating inside. The crowd began to disperse, reporters doing stand-ups, community members clustering in small groups. The woman with Jeremy's photograph approached the microphone area, along with several other Hillcrest residents. A reporter from Channel 7 immediately descended on them, camera rolling. Can you tell us how this contamination has affected your family? I couldn't watch. I walked back to my car, hands shaking slightly as I unlocked the door. My phone rang. Douglas Whitmore, Natalie's defense attorney. I answered. What? Mr. Caldwell. I'm calling as a professional courtesy to inform you that Mrs. Caldwell will be holding her own press conference tomorrow at 10 a.m. You're joking. She has a right to tell her side of the story. Her side? I laughed, sharp and bitter. The side where she poisoned 60,000 people for money? The side where she was manipulated and coerced by Bryce Patterson, who used their personal relationship to... I hung up. She was going to play victim. Of course she was. The affair, the corruption, all of it would be reframed as Patterson's manipulation of a vulnerable woman. Another text from Agent Lang. Reviewed footage. Man you described is Kenneth Vance, attorney for Patterson. No approach, no violation of witness tampering restrictions. But noted. So Patterson's lawyer was watching me at a federal press conference. Fantastic. I started the car and pulled out of the parking lot, past news vans and protesters, and the machinery of justice grinding slowly forward. The radio automatically connected to my phone, and NPR was already covering the story. What officials are calling one of the largest environmental corruption cases in recent history. The EPA says contamination from illegally disposed toxic waste has affected communities across 3 states. I turned it off. The press conference was scheduled for 2 o'clock. I knew because Special Agent Lang had called me the night before to warn me it was coming. Natalie's attorney filed notice with the court, she'd said, her voice tight with barely controlled frustration. They're holding it at the Marriott downtown. We can't stop them. But I wanted you to hear it from me first. I'd thanked her and hung up. Then I'd sat in the dark living room for an hour, staring at nothing. Now it was 1:30, and I was parked across the street from the hotel, watching news vans set up their equipment. I shouldn't have been there. My divorce attorney, a sharp woman named Julie Brennan, who'd come highly recommended, had explicitly told me to stay away. Let them spin whatever narrative they want, she'd said during our meeting yesterday. You're not part of this circus. The evidence speaks for itself. But I couldn't stay away. I needed to see what Natalie was going to say. What story she'd crafted to explain away the emails I'd found, the payments, the falsified reports. The dead children. My phone buzzed. A text from my mom. Kids are having lunch. Tyler wants to know if you'll be home for dinner. Yes. Making spaghetti. Their favorite. The normalcy of it felt obscene. My children eating sandwiches at my mother's house while their mother prepared to lie on national television. While families in Hillcrest buried kids who died because Natalie had signed off on dumping toxins in their water supply. I'd visited Hillcrest 3 days ago, driven through the neighborhoods I'd only seen in news reports, past the elementary school where they'd had to install water filters in every fountain, past houses with yellow ribbons tied around trees, one ribbon for each sick child on the block. I'd stopped at a small memorial someone had set up near the old chemical plant. Photographs of children, some smiling in school pictures, others bald from chemotherapy. Flowers wilted in the February cold. A handmade sign. They knew. They did nothing. I'd stood there for 20 minutes, reading the names. Sophia Garrett, age 7. Michael Brennan, age 5. Ashley Cooper, age 11. Natalie had known about all of them. The emails proved it. An internal report from Patterson Environmental Services, dated 18 months ago, had specifically flagged elevated contamination levels near residential areas. Natalie had received it, read it, and approved continued operations anyway. 3 weeks later, Patterson had transferred $15,000 to an account in her name. More news vans arrived. I recognized reporters from the major networks, their hair perfect despite the wind. A small crowd had gathered on the sidewalk. Protesters, I realized, as they unrolled a banner. Justice for Hillcrest. My phone rang. Julie Brennan. Please tell me you're not there, she said without preamble. I didn't answer. Ryan, whatever happens in that room, whatever she says, it doesn't change the facts. The federal prosecutor has her dead to rights. This is just theater. I know. Then why are you there? I watched a black SUV pull up to the hotel entrance. Natalie emerged from the back seat, flanked by her attorney, a silver-haired man named Robert Ashford who charged $800 an hour and specialized in white-collar defense. She wore a navy suit, minimal makeup, her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. the grieving victim costume. I need to see her face when she lies, I said. Julie sighed. Don't do anything stupid. Don't approach her, don't make a scene. Just observe and leave. Understood. I hung up and got out of the car. The hotel conference room was packed. I slipped in through the back, standing against the wall behind a cluster of reporters. No one noticed me. All eyes were on the front of the room, where Natalie sat at a table beside Ashford, a bottle of water and a box of tissues positioned strategically in front of her. Ashford stood and adjusted the microphone. Thank you all for coming. My client, Natalie Caldwell, has asked for this opportunity to address the serious allegations that have been made against her. She wants to set the record straight about her relationship with Bryce Patterson and the circumstances that led to her involvement in this tragic situation. Tragic situation, as if it were a natural disaster instead of deliberate poisoning for profit. Ms. Caldwell has been employed by Pennsylvania's Environmental Protection Agency for 11 years, Ashford continued. She has an exemplary record of public service. She is a mother of 2 young children, and she is a victim of manipulation, coercion, and abuse of power by her superior, Bryce Patterson. A murmur rippled through the crowd. I felt my hands clench into fists. Ashford gestured to Natalie. I'll let Ms. Caldwell speak for herself. She stood slowly, gripping the edge of the table. When she spoke, her voice was soft, trembling. I want to start by saying how deeply sorry I am. To the families in Hillcrest and the other affected communities, I am so sorry for the pain you've suffered. I think about you every day. I think about the children who got sick, who died, and Her voice broke. She reached for a tissue, dabbing at her eyes. I felt bile rise in my throat. I was in an impossible position, she continued. Bryce Patterson was my boss. He is, a powerful man with connections throughout the state government. When he first approached me about approving certain disposal permits, I refused. I told him the contamination levels were too high, that it wasn't safe. This was new. This wasn't in any of the emails I'd found. But Bryce didn't accept no for an answer. He told me that if I didn't cooperate, he would make sure I lost my job. He said he had friends in Harrisburg who would blacklist me from ever working in environmental protection again. I was terrified. I'm a single income earner. My husband works part-time from home. We have 2 children. I couldn't afford to lose my job. Single income earner. As if my consulting work was some hobby instead of contributing 40% of our household income. And then, she paused, wiping her eyes again. Then Bryce began a campaign of psychological manipulation. He would call me into his office late at night. He would make inappropriate comments. He made it clear that my continued employment depended on my cooperation in multiple ways. The implication hung in the air. Several reporters leaned forward, scribbling notes. The affair wasn't consensual, Natalie said, her voice dropping to almost a whisper. It was coerced. I was terrified of what would happen if I refused him. And once it started, once I'd compromised myself that way, he had leverage over me. He threatened to tell my husband, to ruin my marriage, unless I signed off on the permits he wanted approved. I couldn't breathe. The room felt too small, too hot. The money that was transferred to my account, I never asked for it. Bryce set up that account without my knowledge and told me later it was insurance to keep me compliant. He said if I ever tried to report what was happening, he would make it look like I was the one taking bribes, that I had initiated everything. Ashford placed a hand on her shoulder. Ms. Caldwell reported the contamination issues to her supervisors multiple times, but her concerns were dismissed. She felt trapped in a system that protected powerful men like Patterson while silencing women who tried to speak up. A reporter raised her hand. Ms. Caldwell, why didn't you go to the authorities sooner? Why didn't you report Patterson's behavior? Natalie looked directly at the camera, tears streaming down her face. Because I was ashamed. Because I was scared. Because I thought no one would believe me. Bryce Patterson is a wealthy, connected man with an army of lawyers. I'm just a state employee trying to do her job and support her family. Who would have listened to me? Your husband listened, another reporter called out. He's the one who reported you to federal investigators. Something flickered across Natalie's face. Anger, maybe, or fear, but it vanished quickly. My husband found evidence that looked damning, and I understand why he did what he did. But he didn't know the full story. He didn't know what Bryce had been doing to me for the past 2 years. I wanted to tell him, but I was terrified of what Bryce would do if I broke silence. 2 years. She'd told me the affair had lasted 7 months. Now it was 2 years. The lies kept multiplying. Ashford stepped back to the microphone. Ms. Caldwell is cooperating fully with federal investigators. She has provided extensive testimony about Bryce Patterson's operation, including details about other officials he compromised through similar tactics. She is a witness, not a perpetrator. The charges against her are unjust, and we will be fighting them vigorously. The questions came rapid fire after that. Natalie answered some, deflected others, cried through most of them. She was good. I had to give her that. She looked fragile, victimized, genuinely remorseful. And maybe some of it was true. Maybe Patterson had manipulated her, pressured her. But I'd read those emails. I'd seen her responses. This is going to make us both very comfortable. She'd written after one particularly large payment. Looking forward to our weekend away. That wasn't coercion, that was partnership. I left before the press conference ended, pushing through the crowd of reporters and out into the cold February air. My hands were shaking. From rage, from disgust, I couldn't tell anymore. My phone rang before I reached my car. Agent Lang. You saw it, she said. Not a question. Yeah. Her attorneys already filed motions to suppress the emails, claiming you obtained them illegally through spousal abuse tactics. They're arguing you were controlling and paranoid, that you violated her privacy as part of a pattern of coercive behavior. I laughed, a hollow sound. Of course they are. It won't work. The forensic analysis confirms everything: the timeline, the payments, the falsified reports. Her own words condemn her. But Ryan, you need to prepare yourself. This is going to get worse before it gets better. She was right. Over the next 3 months, Natalie's legal team launched a media campaign portraying her as a victim of both Patterson and me. Talk shows featured domestic abuse experts analyzing our marriage based on nothing but speculation. Online forums debated whether I was a hero or a vindictive husband. Someone started a crowdfunding campaign for Natalie's legal defense that raised $40,000 in 2 weeks. Meanwhile, the contamination kept spreading. The EPA's expanded investigation found toxic waste at 17 additional sites across Pennsylvania, Ohio, and West Virginia. The death toll, because that's what it was, a death toll, climbed to 43 children and counting. Thousands more showed elevated levels of carcinogens in their blood. Patterson tried to cut a deal, offering testimony against Natalie and the other officials in exchange for reduced charges. The U.S. attorney rejected it. They had enough evidence to bury everyone involved. The trial began in September, 8 months after I'd first seen that hotel charge on our bank statement. I attended every day, sitting in the back of the courtroom while prosecutors methodically dismantled Natalie's victim narrative. They presented the emails, hundreds of them, showing clear, calculated coordination between Natalie and Patterson. They showed the financial records, tracking payments that coincided with specific permit approvals. They brought in EPA investigators who testified about the falsified reports, the buried complaints, the systematic cover-up. And they brought in the families. Joanne Whitfield testified about her daughter Kayla, now 10, still fighting leukemia. She held up medical bills totaling over $300,000 while Natalie stared at the defense table. Michael Brennan's parents testified about their 5-year-old son's brain tumor, about watching him deteriorate over 18 months before he died. His mother brought his favorite stuffed animal, a worn blue elephant, and placed it on the witness stand while she spoke. 17 families total. 17 testimonies about sick children, contaminated water, and officials who knew and did nothing. Natalie cried through most of it. Her attorney objected repeatedly, arguing the testimonies were prejudicial. The judge overruled him every time. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. Guilty on all counts. Patterson got 23 years. The other officials received sentences ranging from 8 to 15 years. Natalie got 18 years in federal prison. I was in the courtroom when the sentence was read. She turned to look at me, her face pale and drawn. I don't know what she was searching for. Forgiveness, maybe, or some sign that I still cared. I looked away. Emma and Tyler adjusted better than I expected. Kids are resilient in ways adults forget how to be. We moved to Ohio permanently, into a modest house near my parents. Emma joined the soccer team. Tyler made friends with the kid next door, who had an impressive collection of dinosaur toys. They asked about their mother sometimes. I told them the truth, in age-appropriate doses. That she'd made very bad choices that hurt people. That she was in prison because of those choices. That it was okay to still love her and also be angry with her. Emma stopped asking after a while. Tyler still drew pictures for her sometimes, which I dutifully mailed to the Federal Correctional Facility in West Virginia where Natalie was serving her sentence. I never wrote, never visited. The divorce was finalized 3 months after her conviction. Julie Brennan had been right. The evidence spoke for itself. Natalie signed the papers without contesting anything. She had bigger problems. The Hillcrest families filed a class action lawsuit against Patterson Environmental Services, the state EPA, and 17 other entities. The settlement took 4 years to negotiate, but finally reached $847 million. It wouldn't bring back the children who'd died. Wouldn't undo the cancers, the neurological damage, the contaminated water that generations would have to deal with. But it was something. I was contacted by several of the families over the years. Some wanted to thank me. Others wanted to know why I hadn't noticed sooner, why I hadn't stopped Natalie before more children got sick. I didn't have good answers for them. I'd been blind to what was happening in my own house. That failure would follow me forever. Agent Lang called me on the 5-year anniversary of Natalie's conviction. Thought you'd want to know. The cleanup at Hillcrest is finally complete. Soil remediation, new water infrastructure, the works. The EPA's declaring it safe for the first time in a decade. That's good, I said, and meant it. There's going to be a ceremony next month. Community celebration. memorial for the families who lost children. Some of them asked if you'd be willing to attend. I thought about it for a long time, about facing those families again, about being thanked for doing something I should have done sooner. "I'll be there," I said finally. The ceremony was held on a Saturday in October, under clear blue skies that felt like a blessing. They'd built a memorial park on the site of the old chemical plant, the one Patterson's company had used as an illegal dumping ground. Bronze plaques listed the names of the children who'd died. A fountain ran with clean, tested water. Joanne Whitfield found me in the crowd. Her daughter Kayla stood beside her, taller now, her hair grown back, wearing a survivor's smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Thank you for coming," Joanne said. "How is she?" I asked, looking at Kayla. 3 years in remission. The doctors are cautiously optimistic." She squeezed her daughter's shoulder. "We're lucky. Not everyone was." I looked at the memorial, at the names etched in bronze. 43 children. The final count had stopped there, though dozens more were still fighting cancers and illnesses that might kill them years from now. "I'm sorry I didn't find out sooner," I said. "I'm sorry I didn't stop her before—" "You stopped her when you could," Joanne interrupted. "That's what matters. You chose truth over loyalty, over your own comfort. A lot of people wouldn't have." I wanted to believe that, wanted to accept the absolution she was offering, but late at night, when I couldn't sleep, I still saw those emails I'd read in my car that first day. Still calculated how many children had gotten sick in the months between when Natalie started taking bribes and when I'd finally discovered it. Still wondered what kind of person I was that I'd never noticed, never questioned, never looked hard enough at the life we were living. Emma is 16 now. She wants to be an environmental engineer, which she insists has nothing to do with what happened with her mother. I don't believe her, but I don't push. Tyler is 13 and obsessed with basketball. They're good kids. Better than they had any right to be, given everything. They've each visited Natalie once. Emma went when she was 14, came back quiet and thoughtful. She never told me what they talked about. Tyler went last year, came back angry. He hasn't asked to go again. I haven't seen Natalie since the sentencing. She writes occasionally, letters that arrive in my mailbox like ghosts of our former life. I read the first few, then stopped. There was nothing she could say that would change anything. No explanation that would make sense of how a person chooses money over children's lives. Last month, I received a letter from a law firm representing several Hillcrest families. They were establishing a foundation to monitor environmental compliance and support communities affected by toxic contamination. They wanted to know if I'd be willing to serve on the board. I said yes. It won't undo the past, won't bring back the children who died or heal the ones still suffering, won't erase my failure to see what was happening under my own roof. But it's something. A way to turn the worst discovery of my life into something that might prevent the next tragedy. A way to honor the families who suffered while I was living in comfortable ignorance. I think about that day in the grocery store sometimes, standing in line, seeing that hotel charge, my entire world about to implode. If I could go back, knowing everything that would follow, would I still look at that bank statement? Would I still investigate? Would I still turn her in? The answer is yes. Every time, it's yes. Because some truths are more important than comfort. Some betrayals demand exposure, no matter the cost. And some choices, once you understand their full weight, allow only one response. I lost my wife that day. My children lost their mother. Our family was destroyed, our lives permanently altered. But 60,000 people got justice. 43 families got answers. And communities that had been poisoned got cleanup, compensation, and the knowledge that the people who'd harmed them would be held accountable. In the end, that has to be enough. It has to be. Because the alternative, choosing silence, choosing comfort, choosing to look away, is a different kind of poison. One that spreads invisibly until it contaminates everything it touches. I learned that lesson the hardest way possible, but I learned it. And I'll carry it with me for the rest of my life.